concentrated tomato paste, corn syrup, and modified starches. That is what most of America's best-selling ketchup brands are actually made from. Not vine-ripened tomatoes, not wholesome recipes, chemical shortcuts dressed up in red bottles with pictures of fresh produce that never touch the production line. But squeeze the wrong brand onto your plate and what you're really eating is heavily processed sweeteners, excessive sodium, and filler ingredients disguised as classic American ketchup. If this has been your go-to brand for 10, 20, 30 years, everything we found has been on your table that entire time. Today, we're breaking down 8 ketchup brands that failed our investigation, including 2 that market themselves as premium and health-conscious, plus the 3 brands that are actually made from real tomatoes with ingredients you can trust. Coming in at number 8, French's. You probably know French's for their mustard. That bright yellow squeeze bottle has been an American cookout staple for over a century. So when French's launched their ketchup line, they leaned hard into one promise: no high-fructose corn syrup, vine-ripened tomatoes, a cleaner alternative to the big brands. The label looks wholesome. The marketing feels responsible. But flip that bottle around and read the fine print. Independent ingredient reviews have flagged something French's doesn't advertise. The sodium content is surprisingly high for a product marketed as a better choice. 1 tablespoon delivers a significant hit of salt, and most people don't stop at 1 tablespoon. Pile it on a burger, dip your fries, spread it across a meatloaf, and you're consuming far more sodium than you realize from a single condiment. Then there are the natural flavor additives. French's lists natural flavors on the label without disclosing what those flavors actually are. Natural is one of the most abused words in food marketing. It can mean dozens of processed compounds engineered in a lab to mimic real taste. You don't know what you're eating. French's knows exactly what it is. They chose not to tell you. Squeeze it out. Watch the consistency, that thin, watery texture that separates in the bottle. That's not how real tomato-based ketchup behaves. Real tomatoes have body, fiber, substance. This pours like tinted water because the tomato content is stretched as thin as the honesty on the label. For anyone managing blood pressure with daily medication, or families pouring this on every meal without checking the panel, that hidden sodium adds up fast. Every squeeze is salt you didn't budget for. Every serving works against the prescription you're counting on. A cleaner alternative. That's what they promised. What they delivered is slightly different marketing wrapped around the same old problems. If the so-called clean alternative is hiding sodium and mystery flavors, imagine what the budget brands are getting away with. At number 7, great value. Walmart's house brand, the cheapest ketchup on the shelf, $1 or $2 for a big bottle. For millions of American families, great value isn't a choice. It's a budget decision. When money is tight, you grab the cheapest option and hope it's close enough to the real thing. It's not close enough. Food labeling reviews have pulled great value ketchup apart ingredient by ingredient. What they found reads less like a condiment recipe and more like an industrial formula. Corn syrup appears prominently on the label. Modified food starches bulk up the texture artificially. The actual tomato solids, the part that should be the foundation of any product calling itself ketchup, are significantly lower than premium brands. You're not buying tomato ketchup. You're buying corn syrup with enough red coloring to pass. Open the bottle. That overly sweet, almost candy-like smell. That's the corn syrup dominating everything else in the formula. Taste it side by side with a brand made from real tomatoes, and the difference is immediate and unmistakable. Great value tastes like sugar with a faint tomato memory. The sweetness hits first, the aftertaste is hollow, and the tomato flavor vanishes before your palate can even register it. The price tells you everything you need to know. You cannot produce real tomato ketchup at that price point. The math doesn't work. So they replace the expensive ingredient, actual tomatoes, with the cheap ones, corn syrup and starch. The bottle looks the same. The color looks close enough. But what's inside is a fundamentally different product. For adults over 50 managing cholesterol or watching their weight, or anyone using this ketchup daily without thinking twice about it, those corn-based sweeteners contribute to inflammation, insulin spikes, and cardiovascular strain that compounds quietly with every single meal. $1 saved on ketchup. Years added to your health risks. Walmart priced your well-being at $1.99. The budget brand cuts corners openly. But the next brand on this list hides its shortcuts behind a name families have trusted for generations. Number 6. Del Monte. The name alone sounds like a promise. Del Monte. From the mountain. Fresh, natural, straight from the earth. They've been selling that image since 1886. Over a century of trust built one grocery trip at a time. Your grandmother used Del Monte. Your mother used Del Monte. That kind of brand loyalty feels earned. It feels like family tradition. It isn't. Consumer nutrition analyses have called out Del Monte ketchup for something the vintage label doesn't advertise. Heavy added sugar. Not a little. Not a reasonable amount for flavor balance. Heavy. The kind of sugar load that transforms a condiment into something closer to a dessert topping than a savory companion. And the tomatoes themselves are not what that farm-fresh branding implies. Del Monte uses concentrated tomato paste. That means tomatoes are cooked down, stripped of water, reduced to a thick industrial paste, then reconstituted with water and sweeteners to create what they call ketchup. The fresh tomato on the label is a fantasy. What's in the bottle is a manufactured product engineered from concentrate and reassembled in a factory. Squeeze it onto a plate. That unnaturally uniform color. That glossy, almost plastic sheen. Real tomatoes don't produce that. Real tomatoes give you variation, texture, depth of color. This is factory floor consistency, every batch identical because there's nothing natural left to create variation. For people managing diabetes or metabolic syndrome, or families serving this at every dinner without reading the sugar content on the back, the blood sugar spikes are real and cumulative. Regular use means regular insulin resistance building quietly over months and years. A condiment shouldn't be working against your medication. Del Monte's is working against it every single day. From the mountain, straight to the sugar factory, 140 years of trust. 140 years of concentrate. That's 3 brands down. 3 brands you've probably bought this month. It gets worse. Number 5 is one most people trust without question. Heinz vine-ripened tomatoes. Thick, rich texture. The brand families have reached for at backyard barbecues and weeknight dinners for decades. Heinz doesn't just sell ketchup. They sell reliability. The kind of brand that feels safe because it's always been there on the shelf waiting for you. Always been there. Always been misleading you. Testing comparisons have shown that despite the vine-ripened promise splashed across every label, Heinz ketchup contains significant added sweeteners alongside its tomato base. The thick, rich texture they advertise isn't coming entirely from tomatoes. It's coming from added sugars and processing techniques that bulk up the product while quietly diluting the nutritional value you think you're getting. They also use preservatives, not prominently listed, not proudly displayed on the front of the bottle, but they're on the ingredient list if you know where to look and what to look for. Ingredients designed to extend shelf life, not to nourish your family. A bottle of Heinz can sit in your refrigerator for months without changing. Real tomato products don't last that long without chemical help. That longevity is chemistry, not quality. Dip a spoon in. That thick, sticky consistency that clings to everything it touches. Real tomato sauce has weight, but it flows naturally. This clings because it's been engineered to cling. The mouthfeel is heavy, almost syrupy. That's sugar doing the work that actual tomatoes should be doing. For older adults taking blood pressure or diabetes medications, or anyone relying on this as a harmless everyday condiment, the combination of excess sodium and sugar doesn't just add empty calories. It actively interferes with the medications designed to manage those exact conditions you're trying to control. Vine-ripened promises, sugar-loaded reality. The tomato on the label, the chemistry in the bottle. If you're learning something new today, hit subscribe. It's free, and it means you'll never miss these exposés. Think you've been making the smart choice by paying more for a restaurant brand? Wait until you see what fancy really means. Here's where it gets personal. Number 4. Whataburger. If you've ever been to Texas, you know Whataburger isn't just a restaurant. It's practically a religion, and their fancy ketchup has a cult following that borders on obsessive loyalty. People buy it by the case. They stock their refrigerators with it. They swear on everything they own that it's better than anything on the grocery shelf. That devotion is powerful. It's also blinding them to what's actually in the bottle. Nutrition reviewers have dissected Whataburger fancy ketchup and found an elevated sodium and sugar profile that rivals and sometimes exceeds conventional grocery store brands. The fancy label is doing heavy lifting for a product that delivers the same problematic ingredients as the budget options we already exposed. You're paying restaurant markup for the same nutritional red flags wrapped in nostalgia. The sodium content is particularly concerning. Ketchup is already one of the sneakiest sodium sources in the American diet because people don't think of it as a salty food. It tastes sweet. That sweetness masks the salt hiding underneath. And Whataburger loads both in. Sweet enough to hide the sodium. Salty enough to keep you reaching for more. That's not an accident. That's food engineering perfected over decades of restaurant service. Open the bottle. That sharp vinegary hit that cuts through everything on the plate. That intensity isn't flavor complexity. It's acetic acid and sugar competing for your attention while the sodium slips in completely unnoticed. For people over 50 dealing with hypertension or fluid retention, or anyone who douses every meal in this stuff out of fierce brand loyalty, the ketchup you defend the hardest might be the one doing the most damage to your health. Frequent intake worsens the exact conditions your doctor is actively trying to control. Fancy name, fancy bottle. Same old sodium bomb in a different uniform. This next one has a loyal fan base that swears by it, a brand so iconic it practically invented the category. What the nutrition labels show is a very different story. Number 3, and this one will sting. Heinz, America's ketchup. The brand that has been sitting on kitchen tables in this country since 1876. The red bottle is so iconic that restaurants don't even bother stocking alternatives. Heinz is ketchup. Ketchup is Heinz. For most Americans, they're practically the same word. That blind trust is exactly what makes this so dangerous. Investigations into ultra-processed foods have put Heinz under the microscope, and the results should concern every household in America. Heavy reliance on added sugars, distilled vinegar as a primary flavor driver instead of tomato complexity, and the tomato component is concentrated paste, not minimally processed whole tomatoes. The recipe is engineered for shelf life and factory consistency, not for your nutrition. 4 grams of sugar per tablespoon. That's a full teaspoon of sugar in every single serving of ketchup. Most people use 3 to 4 tablespoons per meal without thinking about it. That's 3 to 4 teaspoons of hidden sugar from a condiment you never think of as sweet. Over a week, a month, a year, those teaspoons become pounds. Pounds of sugar you never saw coming because you were too busy watching for sugar in your desserts. Look at the ingredient list carefully. Tomato concentrate from red ripe tomatoes is listed first. Sounds good. Then distilled vinegar. Then high fructose corn syrup. Then corn syrup again. 2 different sweeteners in one product. They split them into separate line items so neither one appears first on the label. That's not transparency. That's accounting tricks applied to your food. Squeeze it out. That perfect, unnaturally smooth consistency. Real tomato products have texture, seeds, natural variation. This is industrial uniformity. Every drop identical because it was designed in a laboratory, not grown in a field. For seniors managing diabetes or kidney disease alongside daily medications, or anyone who's been squeezing this onto every plate for decades without a second thought, the cumulative sugar and sodium load is staggering. Your body has been absorbing Heinz's recipe for years. Your doctor has been fighting against it for just as long. America's most trusted ketchup. America's most overlooked health risk sitting in plain sight. See the pattern? Budget brands cut corners with cheap ingredients. Heritage brands hide behind tradition and nostalgia. So where does that leave the brands that promise to be different? Let's find out. Number 2. Sir Kensington's. This is the one that hurts the most for health-conscious shoppers. The premium glass jar, the clean label aesthetic, the farmer's market vibe that screams, "I care about what I eat." Sir Kensington's positioned itself as everything mainstream ketchup isn't. Better ingredients, higher standards, worth every penny of the premium price. Ingredient analyses tell a very different story. Despite the upscale branding and the artisanal packaging, Sir Kensington's still contains concentrated sweeteners that put it in the same nutritional neighborhood as conventional ketchup. The sodium levels rival the exact brands it claims to be superior to. The gap between the marketing promise and the nutrition panel is wider than the price difference between this and a bottle of Heinz. You're paying $8 to $10 for a glass jar and a carefully crafted brand story. The actual contents deliver the same sugar and salt profile you were desperately trying to escape when you switched brands. The premium packaging is the product. The ketchup inside is the afterthought they hope you never analyze too closely. Unscrew the lid. That artisanal look, the slightly chunky texture, the darker ruby color. It looks more natural. It photographs better for social media. It sits prettier on a dinner table next to a charcuterie board. But the nutritional reality behind that carefully designed aesthetic is remarkably similar to what sits inside a $2 plastic squeeze bottle from any grocery store in America. Appearance isn't composition. Looking healthy isn't being healthy. For adults over 50 who switched to this brand specifically to monitor heart health, or anyone paying premium prices believing they're avoiding the problems we just exposed in Heinz and Hunt's, you unknowingly consume the same excessive salt and hidden sugars you were trying so hard to eliminate from your diet. The betrayal here isn't just about ingredients. It's about calculated intent. Sir Kensington's charges more because they know health-conscious consumers will pay more to feel safe. They monetized your fear of brands like Heinz and delivered the same nutritional problems in a prettier jar with a fancier name. Premium price. Conventional ingredients. $8 wasted on a story. You might think we've hit rock bottom, but the #1 spot goes to a brand that takes the deception even further, one that built its entire identity on being the healthiest choice you could possibly make. Number 1. Primal Kitchen, paleo-friendly, unsweetened, no refined sugar, no high fructose corn syrup, Whole30 approved, keto compatible. Primal Kitchen checked every single box the wellness community demands. They built a brand on the premise that you could have ketchup without the guilt. No compromises, no hidden ingredients. Just clean, honest food for people who take their health seriously. That premise has serious cracks running through it. Critics and nutrition experts have questioned the heavy reliance on alternative sweeteners and flavor engineering techniques that Primal Kitchen uses to replace traditional sugar. The product may not contain refined sugar, but the substitutes aren't necessarily better for your body. They're different. Different isn't always safer. Sometimes different is just a more expensive way to create the same problem. Here's the deeper concern that nobody talks about. These alternative sweeteners and engineered flavors can still reinforce cravings for ultra-processed foods. The whole point of switching to Primal Kitchen is to break free from the processed food cycle entirely. But if the replacement product triggers the same cravings, the same taste dependencies, the same neurological reward patterns as the brands you left behind, you haven't broken free at all. You've just switched prisons and paid double for the transfer. Open the bottle, taste it carefully. There's a sharpness that doesn't belong, a metallic edge that real tomato ketchup simply doesn't have. That's the flavor engineering at work behind the scenes. Compounds designed to mimic sweetness without sugar to trick your palate into satisfaction. Your tongue says ketchup. Your body says something is off. For older adults with digestive sensitivity or anyone whose blood sugar is carefully managed by daily medication, these additives carry real and documented risk. Gastrointestinal discomfort. Unstable glucose responses that spike without warning. The irony is brutal and inescapable. The brand people choose specifically because they're watching their health may be the one quietly undermining it from the inside. Paleo-friendly on the label, problems in the bottle. The healthiest-looking bottle on the shelf, and the most misleading one on this entire list. What brand of ketchup is in your fridge right now? Drop it in the comments. Let's see how many of us have been squeezing these onto our plates without knowing the truth. 8 brands, 8 broken promises, from corn syrup masquerading as tomatoes to premium glass jars full of the same old problems. But real ketchup still exists. 3 brands prove you can squeeze something honest onto your plate. True Made Foods. This is what happens when a company actually tries to solve the sugar problem instead of just rebranding it with fancier packaging. True Made Foods. Ketchup does something genuinely radical in this category. They use real vegetables, carrots, and butternut squash to create natural sweetness while keeping tomatoes front and center in the recipe where they belong. No high fructose corn syrup, no corn syrup of any kind, no mystery sweeteners with chemical names you need a degree to pronounce. The ingredient label is short and fully transparent. Everything listed on it is a food you recognize from your own kitchen. That shouldn't feel revolutionary, but after what we just exposed across 8 major brands, it feels like discovering something rare and honest. The sugar content is verified on the nutrition panel as significantly lower than conventional brands. Not because they replaced sugar with engineered alternatives that trick your body, but because they used vegetables that are naturally sweet on their own. The concept is so simple it's almost embarrassing that other brands haven't adopted it. They haven't because vegetables cost more than corn syrup, and profit margins matter more than your health. True Made Foods chose to spend the money anyway. Squeeze it out. The color is a rich, deep red with an orange warmth from the carrots. The texture has real body to it. It holds together on a fry without dripping off in a watery mess. Taste it and you notice the difference immediately. Tomato flavor that actually tastes like tomato, rounded by a gentle sweetness that satisfies without spiking your blood sugar. For anyone watching blood sugar or managing heart health, this is the ketchup that works with your body instead of against it. Real ingredients. Verified nutrition. Finally, 365 by Whole Foods Market, organic tomato ketchup, USDA organic certified, no artificial preservatives, no corn syrup. A short ingredient list you can read in 5 seconds flat and actually understand every word. That USDA organic certification isn't just a decorative sticker slapped on for marketing. It means every tomato in that bottle met federal organic standards verified by independent inspectors. No synthetic pesticides applied during growing. No genetically modified organisms anywhere in the ingredient chain. Third-party verification confirming the sourcing is actually clean, not the company testing itself and politely asking you to trust their results. The ingredient list tells you everything. Organic tomato paste, organic distilled vinegar, organic sugar in modest amounts, salt, organic onion powder, organic spice. That's it, 6 ingredients total. Compare that to the 12, 15, even 20 ingredients hiding inside conventional brands with names that require a chemistry textbook to decode. Every single entry on this label is something recognizable, something you could explain to your grandchildren without hesitation. Pour it out. The consistency is noticeably thicker than most mainstream brands because the actual tomato solids are higher. You can see tiny flecks of real spice suspended throughout the sauce. It looks like food that came from a kitchen. It smells like actual tomatoes. It tastes like ketchup should taste when it's made from real ingredients instead of industrial shortcuts designed to maximize profit margins. For anyone concerned about long-term pesticide exposure and processed additives, or for families who want a condiment that isn't quietly working against them at every meal, 365 delivers what the premium brands only promise. Cleaner sourcing, simpler formulation, ketchup that earns its place on your table honestly. Annie's Organic Ketchup. If you've been shopping organic for any length of time, you've seen the rabbit on the label. Annie's has built a solid reputation for taking processed food categories and stripping them back to what they should have been all along. Their ketchup follows that same honest approach. Organic tomatoes grown without synthetic pesticides. No synthetic preservatives extending shelf life artificially. No artificial flavors engineering taste in a laboratory. No hidden sweeteners lurking behind clever label language designed to confuse you. USDA Organic Certified, which means independent verification confirming that the ingredients meet federal organic standards before they reach your table. You don't have to take their word for it. The certification does the talking for them. The ingredient list is clean and completely recognizable. Every item on it is something you could find in a home kitchen, not a chemical supply catalog. Annie's doesn't hide behind vague terms like natural flavors or proprietary blends. What's printed on the label is exactly what's in the bottle. Full stop. No exceptions, no fine print. Open it and smell the difference. There's a brightness that cheap ketchup simply cannot replicate no matter how much flavor engineering goes into it. A real tomato scent that's slightly tangy, slightly sweet, and alive with actual produce character. Not the flat, dull chemical smell of concentrate and corn syrup. The color is a natural red with subtle variation, not the unnervingly uniform crimson of industrial processing lines. For adults over 50 looking to reduce processed food intake, or anyone who wants a condiment that supports rather than quietly sabotages their health, Annie's makes the cut. The rabbit on the label. Real food in the bottle. Ketchup the way it was always supposed to be made. 8 brands exposed, 3 that actually deliver. Your next squeeze deserves better. Subscribe now, and if you're watching on TV, tap your remote so you never get blindsided again.